You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies.
Hello, everybody. Welcome here to another edition of Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, under the banner of the Fans First Sports Network. I am your host, Skyler Timmons, joined here by Fan in Despair. It's Evan Lang.
Season over yet, guys?
A big sigh comes from
But
Evan.
I know I'm the worst, because when the season is actually over in a week, I'm going to be like, when's it going to be time for baseball again?
No, it's
because
one of those,
I'm a sucker.
no, that usually gets to me probably about January, when it's starting to get towards spring training. Until then, I don't want to see their mugs, and because just the rage from the whole year, and then the off season of them not doing a dang thing, and so we just sit there doing nothing. I get just filled with rage, and then it's once January starts, you're like, okay, maybe a fan fest is coming up. We'll start to hear some stuff about spring training getting a month away. Good stuff like that.
The Chris Bryant update that we were all desperately waiting for.
Yes, our annual Chris Bryant update of, we think he's going to be really good. He's not. He's not going to be very good.
He's 33 with chronic back issues.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, fun stuff. But yeah, only 1 week left in the season. So this is our final in-season episode of the podcast for 2024. And then we'll roughly have a recap. We'll start the off-season recap and all that stuff while the playoffs happen and whatnot. Because heaven knows we're not in it. But it could be worse. We could have been the Chicago Cubs, who have tied the 68 Mets with 120 losses.
That would be the White Sox.
Yeah, White Sox.
Though the Chicago Cubs will also not be playing meaningful baseball in the fall, so
It's all Chicago. They all stink. But one much more than the other. But yeah, fun stuff. So you appreciate you tuning in while we go throughout this off season. We'll start to get the stretching of topics. We'll try to do the fun stuff, do as much as we can. This is where episodes will really start to fluctuate. But for now, we're still in season, and we got a couple things to talk about here with September winding down. Rockies just finished up their final road trip of the year, lost two of three to the Dodgers, almost won the series, but they got walked off in the ninth inning by Shohei Ohtani. Curse his name. Why did he have to go to the Dodgers? And Mookie Betts, again, why did he have to go to the Dodgers?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a tough one because that was a win. That was a very winnable game for the Rockies. They had a 5-1 lead at one point, and I'm not upset at our very young bullpen who pitched for this game, because they can't be perfect forever, especially, poor Seth Halverson, who went 9 games and 9 2/3 innings to start his big league career without giving up an earned run or even an extra base hit. And he gives up the back-to-back home runs from Ohtani and Betts to end the game. And that's a bummer, but those streaks can't last forever.
And the Dodgers scored 5 of their 6 runs via the home run. So, turns out that when you hit home runs, it's a really good thing. If only the Rockies would try doing that more often as a team.
Hey, this year they have hit an okay amount of home runs, kind of, I guess.
They had that surge for a little bit. Other than that, it's still not great.
Right now, the 2024 Rockies are essentially in the very middle of the pack when it comes to home run totals for the season. Obviously, the fewest home runs in a full regular season came in 1994, and the most came in 1997, and smack dab in the middle is 2024.
And what didn't help was 17 strikeouts, like over 40 some odd strikeouts in 3 games.
46 strikeouts in 3 games against the Dodgers. And in the month of September so far, because the month's not over yet, the Rockies have struck out 15 or more times 5 times. a new franchise record.
Woo! Yeah, this will go down as a very historical season for all the wrong reasons.
Add it to the spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm. I just take bookmarks on Twitter. But yeah, so not a lot of fun stuff. But we kick off a new week, final 6 games, facing off against the Cardinals and the Dodgers here to close out the season at Coors Field. So that's nice. No more traveling, but hopefully the Rockies can squeak out maybe a couple more wins and avoid 100 losses. We'll see. It's going to be close. Very close.
Yeah, although it's frustrating because, like we discussed last week, we're sitting here thinking, well, is avoiding 100 losses actually going to be a bad thing?
But it doesn't matter. Is there really a difference between 99 losses and 100 losses? No, not really.
And before we move on, I want to take one additional pot shot because our friends, the St. Louis Cardinals, who are eliminated from playoff contention, are coming to town this week. And former Colorado Rockie Nolan Arenado has won fewer games in the playoffs as a Cardinal than he has as a Rocky. So
he's also played way more games with the Cardinals than he has with the Rockies during the Chris Bryant era.
just let the bitterness.
I would much rather have Arenado right now than Chris Bryant.
Wouldn't we all? I mean, but
we just took those savings and flushed them down the toilet. Anyway.
Yeah, the whole thing. I keep driving us off. Like the whole thing of it was a bad trade, and yeah, the $50 million that we sent was painful, but it got his big contract off the books and was supposed to save us money in the long term. And then we went and dumped $182 million into Chris Bryant, who across 3 seasons hasn't completed 1 season worth of games.
Mm-hmm. Lousy rich people. Anyways, let's get on to a topic here where we actually had planned. And first one up, Hunter Goodman versus Drew Romo. This has been a debatable topic here in our over at Purple Row among our writers there, and then folks on the internets. Wouldn't you believe it? People on Twitter have opinions. But Hunter Goodman has gotten, since he's come back up, beginning of September, he's gotten quite a bit of playing time. He's played, I think, around 14 games since coming up. He's got 47 plate appearances since coming back up here in September. And Drew Romo, who's been touted as the top prospect for the Rockies, catching prospect, a lot of promise, had a good little bit of playing time when he first came up, was getting the bulk of starts. Roles have reversed. And Drew Romo, riding on the pine, has not played since September 11th. Hunter Goodman getting a lot of playing time, splitting time with Jacob Stallings. But the big thing here is Hunter Goodman and Drew Romo battling out for prominence there in the catching position. Evan, where are you standing here in this little debacle?
I feel like, on my socials and in our writer's room, I've made my stance pretty clear that I think it's patently ridiculous that Drew Romo hasn't taken a single at bat in 11 days, 12 days at this point. I think that's absurd, and I think it displays everything that is wrong with the way this team tends to treat rookies and prospects.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I do also understand that Drew Romo wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire when he was playing. He went a good 5 games without a hit. In 13 total games played, he's got an OPS of 447 without an extra base hit and only 1 hit total. There's clearly a lot of work to be done with his bat there, and I understand that completely. But the whole thing for me is, if you are not going to have a guy taking regular at bats, then he should have spent the last 11 days finishing out the season with AAA Albuquerque, getting regular at bats and continuing to work on stuff versus just sitting in the clubhouse watching people. And, they said he's working with Bam Bam and he's working with the coaching staff and Jacob Stallings and all that stuff like that. And it's like, okay, that's great. but that's not the same as actual in-game experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's September. The Rockies are playing for nothing. These are all meaningless games in the grand scheme of things. So, yeah, you can have Hunter Goodman be the primary catcher right now. That's totally fine. But then you can rotate him and Romo at catcher. You can put Romo at DH. You can put Goodman at DH. You can find ways to give Romo playing time. And that's just not something the Rockies have been doing. And even if we go into next season and the Rockies say, you know what, we don't think Romo is ready. We don't think he's ready to be the starting catcher. That's fine, but you've just wasted 2 weeks of game time for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not going to play it all the rest of the season, then he will have just sat for about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely ways they could have gotten him into games, like even like they were doing with Stallings earlier in the year, 1 to 2 starts a week, maybe. No, you've got 3 catchers. You can use all 3 catchers. No, I don't think anybody's clamoring for Jacob Stallings to be starting every day or getting 4 or 5 starts a week. But with those 3 catchers, you can cycle them around as needed. I will argue I would not, from September 11th, it would not have been wise to option because I would just burned one of his options. So that's less control time and then pushes the question. But obviously the Rockies don't care about options because they burn them willy-nilly anyway.
Yeah, like that's ever stopped the Rockies before.
But then
is this a smart use of the option?
Yeah, but it would be not very wise at this point because they burn one now and then they burn another and then he only has one option left.
Yeah.
Like that wouldn't have been very smart. But it's good that him getting that experience working with guys behind the scenes. But like you're saying, you got to be able to put it into practice too. Okay, put him in as a DH. Let him just focus on hitting for a day. Okay, Drew, we need you to go in and you're just going to work on your plate approach today in game. No, these are the perfect time to let guys get some action, especially these younger ones, to just see what they can do. Because that's what they're doing with Hunter Goodman. No, they've said it. Well, we want to see what he can do as a catcher. That's perfectly fine. You can do that. This is the time to do it. But why is he getting the opportunity now? The bulk of it all, and Drew Romo just kind of has to sit behind the scenes and, to pull a Bud Black quote, learn how to ride a plane.
Yeah. You know? It's like you can do all of this. You can give Hunter Goodman a bulk of the playing time to see what he's got without it being at the expense of another young player.
Yeah.
That's what bothers me. I am all for them getting, because what have we said for most of the season? Got to get Hunter Goodman more playing time. You got to stop messing around, stop sending him up and down. Either you are playing him in the big leagues or you're figuring out what his role is, because he's got very little to prove at AAA anymore. We know what he is down in AAA. We need to know what he is up here in the bigs.
Yeah.
And now they're doing that same thing with Drew Romo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we've seen this organization do consistently, and it drives me insane.
Yeah, and the thing, and I mentioned this to you before we started recording, about, yeah, he's having a little bit better September, mostly a 234 average, 596 slugging. Both of those pretty good. Those are the highest of the season thus far in a month. But it's not that drastically different than some of his other good months, where in June, he also had 5 home runs. He also had 12 RBIs. He struck out 18 times, but he hit a .182 in 55 plate appearances over 18 games. No, just 10 hits. So he has one more hit than he did in June, his best month of the year. I think we've seen a lot of what Goodman has to offer too. Like, we've seen what he can do at the big league level. He's gotten ample opportunities, albeit limited playing time, and that's why we're saying, like, get him some more so you can see what he can do. They're doing that, but he's not doing anything really out of the ordinary than he hasn't already done before.
Yeah.
He's going to run into some home runs. He's going to strike out a lot. And he's going to play some okay defense, good enough, passable defense. But it's nothing that's shouted to me, he needs to start in 2025. It's, okay, he's got a hot streak right now. We've seen that, everybody go through that.
Yeah. And for Goody, I've really enjoyed this hot streak. It's been a lot of fun. And he has put together so far a very good month of September. But it's like you said earlier, and we discussed a little bit before the show, this is the end of the season. The Rockies are not playing meaningful baseball, and most of the we've had the opportunity to play spoiler at some points, but all the other teams are coming in and they're at the end of a very long season as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to discount all the good that Hunter Goodman has done here this month, but what is going to be more meaningful to me is I want to see what he looks like in spring training, and if he can show meaningful development or continue to do what he's doing here in April and in May, the beginning of next season, because I am perfectly okay with Goody being the starting catcher or one of the primary catchers to start 2025. If they decide, you know what, we don't think Drew Romo is ready, we're going to roll with Goodman and Stallings as our duo for the catcher, fine, okay. Mm-hmm. But then I want to see Goody continue to put it together, because that's where it's been a problem, is the beginning of the season. These guys who are slow starters and start really cold can't have that happen with Goodman. If you put him in as the starting catcher and he is starting 3 to 4 games a week, then he needs to be consistent enough to start 3 to 4 games a week.
Yeah.
And I would say if he can essentially duplicate what he's doing here in September, cool, that'll work. That's fine. Mm-hmm. We know exactly what kind of hitter he is. He's a slugger first and foremost, and he's going to strike out a ton.
Yeah.
He's a catcher. That's kind of what we get from most catchers right now. It's more of a prototypical catcher than the Rockies have tended to have in the past with guys like Tony Wolters.
Mm-hmm. Who can hit worth a darn. The growth I really want out of Goodman that he has yet to show is he needs to have that Michael Toglia development of the strike zone, because 2 walks in September. He had 2 walks in August when he played in those handful of games. 1 walk in July, 1 walk in June, 1 walk in May, 1 walk in April. So he's had 4 walks in his last 30 games. That needs to improve. That on base in general needs to improve. As with any slugger, if you're going to be a 3 true outcomes type of guy, you got to add that third outcome into your repertoire, and he does not have that right now. It's strikeout, home run, something else, maybe a double in there. But yeah, that's what we need out of Goodman, is that growth, plate discipline, or doing damage on pitches when he is making more consistent contact to utilize his power. Because when Michael Toglia got on that hot streak, and he's looked better over the course of the year since he came back up in June especially, where we can look at him like, oh, he's got a 212 average. Like, that's not great. Oh, he has 25 home runs and such and such many walks and stuff. We want that. I want that growth in Goodman that we saw to Toglia.
Yeah. Toglia had 21 walks in the month of August and has 9 so far in September.
There you go. Like, yeah, he'll still strike out. He had a 4 strikeout game on Sunday, but there's growth for Toglia that Goodman needs. So I agree with you. Jacob Stallings probably is going to stick around. They're going to deny the options, the mutual option, and then figure out a new contract. Give him a little bit better pay raise. He's deserving of it. Like a $3 million deal or something. I could see that.
I'd be fine with that.
Like, that's nothing. So you'll have him. So there's going to be an extra spot. If they want to give it to Goodman to start the year, perfectly fine. Because then that gives Romo has that luxury of, okay, he can go back down and continue to work on some things they want him to. Because I think friend of the show, Drew Romo, we're big fans of his. And so I think it's too early for people to start discounting him and like, he's a backup at best. Like, no. You took him in the first round with the intention of him being your starting catcher, because the Rockies saw that he was one of the best high school catchers in the country. There's still a lot of room for growth, and I think he can still be a really good catcher.
He is 23 years old.
Yeah. Who just barely cracked the big leagues.
Like, let's dial it back a little bit. Like, I get it. Drew Romo has a lot of stuff to work on, as do plenty of our other prospects right now.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't just pull the ripcord after 13 not so great big league games in his debut and go, oh, he's a backup at best, and this isn't good, and that. Stop.
Yeah. Here's a kid who went from playing high school baseball to professional baseball. Hunter Goodman, he's 24, so he's just a year older, but he had the luxury of going to college. He played a little bit in college. Romo didn't have that, so there's still a learning curve. And he's had his years developing, and we're seeing that. I think we're seeing that with a lot of these high school players the Rockies drafted. We're seeing they're not taking as many anymore because their development process is a little longer because they're having to acclimate them to professional ball. They're filling in that college gap.
And it's worth pointing out again that when we drafted Drew, it was common knowledge that he was a glove-first catcher whose bat needed the most work. Yeah. And we have seen his bat develop. He hit very well this year in AAA. He's hit fairly decently over his last few seasons, and there's more development yet to come. Because you don't just stop developing once you make your big league debut. Look at Brenton Doyle this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need that for a lot of these guys. I'm trying to pull up Drew Romo's stuff. Yeah, so 46 plate appearances, 46 at bats roughly. So 13 games, 8 hits, 11 total bases. He's got 3 doubles. He's come very close on some home runs as well. 6 ribbies. Yeah, like most guys, the strikeouts need work. He's got to work on those strikeouts. But there's still promise there. It's too early to throw him under the bus and say, no, he's not good enough to be a big league catcher. He's 23 and he's played like a dozen games.
Yeah, and especially when, his batting average in high A and double A, which are 2 more pitcher-friendly than hitter-friendly leagues, was only 254. Okay, cool. But he also had a totally fine on-base percentage, above 300, everywhere he's played in the minor leagues. This is a guy who can get on base. This is a guy who has potential in that bat. And you need to tap into that potential and help him find his big league stroke.
Yeah. So and he has that luxury of, okay, he's got that taste. He's getting that good experience. At least the Rockies aren't just having him sit there and he's just like, I hope I play. But he's actively working and doing things. And maybe there is some humbling and some growth that needs to happen behind the scenes to realize, oh, yeah, I got to do a lot more work. Maybe it is a cut of realism for him. Understand, oh, this is what it's like. I need to work on some things a ton. This isn't going to be handed to me, which hopefully it is a good kick in the pants. And it lights a fire under him so he can continue to work hard and hard. Because you've seen our rooftop mingle with him. Good dude. Good head on his shoulders. He's a smart dude, a good player, a good teammate. And I think that was the thing, is him just learning to take charge on the field. And so hopefully he's getting that experience now. But don't write off Romo. He should be playing while he's up here, get some starts in here. But it's okay for Goodman to be getting this action. But he's still got growth to do too. Nobody's a refined product that we're talking about here. Young guys that they got a long way to go, Evan.
Yeah. And even after his first full season, there's going to be more to develop. Again, look at Brenton Doyle. Mm-hmm. Night and day between his rookie season and his sophomore season.
Yeah. So it's an interesting situation, just what they're going to do with this catcher position, but there's still room to roll. And I think that's the beauty of Jacob Stallings. Gives you this buffer of a veteran guy who can work well with either of them as the veteran mentor, who can also contribute on the field. But then also at some point you still have some young flexibility of who you can throw in there and develop them. That's what they just need to keep doing, is develop these guys. Give them opportunities. Commit to Romo, let him go for a month, playing every day and see if he can figure it out. It's just what you have to do with some guys. Look at Michael Toglia this year. Stick him at first base. He made the job his. Tied for the team lead in home runs.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, that's our a Goodman versus Romo debate conversation here. So just want to see what they do in the offseason and how it works out in spring training. Spring training will be interesting to watch, Evan,
Yes.
when it gets down to those battles. I think
And
that'll
for
be a good one.
people who are saying, "Oh, we should trade one of them," I can guarantee you that's not going to happen.
No, the thing with Goodman is that bat, especially, like he can be more of a DH opportunity. And articles, he's working on making sure he can at least play those other positions a little better in right field or at first base if needed, or in the outfield. He's not a very great outfielder, but he's working on it. And so him being able to pull that out of his back pocket, some versatility,
Yeah.
good stuff.
And he's his most comfortable when he's behind the plate, but he can be a perfectly adequate, backup for most of the other positions that he can play.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. But that'll do it here for our first segment here. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about another positional battle debate thingy. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on Affected by Altitude. Welcome back here to Affected by Altitude. Skyler Timmons along with Evan Lang here with you. Just finished up a conversation about Hunter Goodman and Drew Romo. We got another one here. This is a lot bigger, I guess, position thing that's irked people at times. But it comes down to your extra veteran outfielder between Sam Hilliard and Jake Cave. Jake Cave, who has put up career high numbers in playing time this season. And then you have Sam Hilliard, who makes his glorious return back to the Rockies. He's picked up a little bit as of late, but both of them kind of fill the same role. But as of now, with Brenton Doyle's knee bothering him and Jordan Beck kind of scuffling at the plate, they're playing more and more during these last couple of series of the season. Do you keep one or the other? That's the question we have to answer for ourselves here, Evan. Both of them are still under team control. What do we do? What are our thoughts here on Sam Hilliard and versus Jake Cave?
I think you can't keep both. First and foremost, I think you're going to have to pick between one or the other, just because, I like both guys, but especially with the upcoming glut of outfielders in the Rockies farm system, there is no reason to keep two 30-plus-year-old utility outfielders on the team. I think would be a silly thing for the Rockies to do. And you're going to have to pick one of these guys to part ways with. And honestly, we were talking earlier this season about, having made peace with the fact that Jake Cave was probably going to be on this team next year. And if he would stick to just being the fourth outfielder, totally fine. But at this point, honestly, I think I would go with Sam Hilliard. Sam Hilliard's putting together, honestly, a really pretty good season where he's got an OPS of 856. And granted, not that much playing time, only 119 total at bats before today's game, but he's put up 0.6 WAR. His on base percentage is the best it's been since his rookie season, where he's got an OBP above 300. And that's the big thing, is we are seeing Hilliard has sort of evolved more into where he needs to be, where, he still does strike out sometimes, but he's doing a little bit better at drawing walks, and he is striking out less. And he does still have that really good power stroke where if he gets his A swing off, that ball's going out. Mm-hmm. And I combine that with the fact that Hilliard is a better defensive outfielder than Jake Cave, especially when he's been playing in center field like he has been for Brenton Doyle over the last few days. Because Cave was signed to be the backup center fielder for Brenton Doyle and has played almost no center field this season. And when he has, it's been fine, I guess. But I think Hilliard is a better defensive center fielder. I think he's a better hitter than Jake Cave. And honestly, as much as I like what Jake Cave has brought to this clubhouse, I think if you're picking between the two, you've got to pick Hilliard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting one where you they fill the same role where Sam Hilliard is Jake Cave with a little more power, whereas Jake Cave is a little bit more of the traditional backup outfielder where, yeah, he'll throw out some slap hits, more of a contact guy, and can play all three outfield positions decently enough where it's okay to move him around, but he should have never really been that everyday player. So it's an interesting debate, and I'm just trying to pull up some of the stats here.
Yeah. So Jake Cave we have a very good sample size, for better or for worse, on Jake Cave this year, as he has had a career high in games played, in plate appearances, and in total at-bats, where he's at 252, which is, up there for one of his better marks in his career. He has a 289 on-base percentage, and he has a 393 slugging percentage. We know who Jake Cave is.
He's a man of the people.
He is a man of the people. And honestly, like, if this were saying, hey, if you're building a coaching staff, who would you want, Sam Hilliard or Jake Cave? I'd probably go with Jake Cave.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not building a coaching staff. We're fielding a baseball team.
But he yelled at the umpire.
I liked that
one time.
I liked that a lot. But again, I am really pleased with what Jake Cave has been in this clubhouse. He is always really amped up. He's always supporting his teammates. He is a fantastic presence on a very young team. But he's also just okay at best when it comes to being a baseball player. And he has played way too much this season. I think we've hashed that out as much as we possibly can. But that amount of playing time has once again given us a pretty good sample size to say, okay, this is who Jake Cave is. This is who he's going to be. And it's probably not going to change.
Mm-hmm. Where he was thrust into playing, I'm not getting mad at him. And it was more out of necessity. They needed to play him as much. Because like we said, Chris Bryant was a non-factor. Michael Toglia ended up being your first baseman. Other guys were injured or not ready. So there's a reason why he played as much as he did. And among other reasons of just Bud Black preferring him. Yeah, Sam Hilliard in just 52 games has, compared to his 117, so in half the amount of games has more home runs, same amount of stolen bases, and then just generally across the board, a better slash line, OPS, all that good stuff, and is worth 0.6 WAR, while Jake Cave is worth negative 0.4 WAR this season. Say if you had to keep one of these guys, you'd probably go Sam Hilliard. One, he's younger. He's also going to be a little cheaper than Jake Cave, who made roughly $1 million something this year, has 1 year of arbitration left, probably tries to push it up to like $2 million or something. That's not really the price like for a Jake Cave that you need to pay. So either you can try and trade him, or I don't see many teams wanting him, just non-tender him, waiver him, just like they did with Sam Hilliard, who they managed to trade a couple years ago to Atlanta. And then he found his way back. But yeah, this is a different Sam Hilliard who's, I think, developed into that role of the guy who's not expected to play every day. He's going to be a late game specialist. Both these guys have done well late in the game. But Sam Hilliard brings that extra oomph where he is that home run threat. And what was it? Oh, he's tied like a franchise record or set a franchise record for home runs that have given the team the lead. Pinch hit home runs, giving the team the lead or something like that. I think I saw that stat.
Yeah. The big thing for me for Sam is just comparing where he is now to where he was when he came back to the Rockies, where he knew at the beginning of the season he was fighting for a roster spot, and it was
against
probably
Bradley Zimmer.
Against Bradley Zimmer. And he said, I get what I'm fighting for, but I still want to start, and maybe I can do good enough that they'll let me start. And he spent most of the season or half the season down in AAA Albuquerque. It was fantastic down there, and is called back up. And now that he's up here, when you watch interviews with him, on the broadcasts, on the news sites, you can tell that he has really settled into an understanding of the importance of his role, which is that he's going to get some starts. Of course he is, because he's, you're always going to get a few starts out of your backup outfielder. You got to rest your guys,
especially for the Rockies playing at Coors Field, where there needs to be a little bit more load management, having to traverse that outfield. So you need guys that can step in.
But he understands that his job is to, when he does get playing time, come in and make a difference. Mm-hmm. And so far, he's done that very well this season.
Yeah, and he's got the cannon of an arm, still as we remember it. So I think him getting traded away was a good move at the time. And then he was starting to do good with Atlanta, and then injuries and other stuff. And then so he kind of bounced around and then finds his way back to the Rockies, a different player than what they had. Because, speaking of guys who had a hot September when he first came up, and it convinced us all, oh, he's going to be the next great outfielder for us. And he just sort of petered out. And so he's come back now a different player, I think, evolved, matured. No, he's not the player that we all hoped for. I'm sure he's not the player that he had hoped to be, but he's still a good, useful player now that can still help a Rockies team because he's grown up in this organization, so he can help lead these guys. Remember, Evan, wasn't he the one who introduced the home run glasses when they first had a couple years ago?
He was indeed. He is the creator of the home run shades.
So he can be that kind of silent leader, I think, that a lot of these other young outfielders can look up to. A quiet guy. He reminds me a lot of Seth Smith in a way, where he's kind of a quieter guy, Mr. Late Night. Oh, Seth Smith was not a very great outfielder, but man, could he hit. Sam Hilliard has the advantage of being able to play good outfield, but he can fill that leadership role. Maybe not as outspoken like Jake Cave is, because, man, you can tell that Jake Cave is beloved in that clubhouse among the guys, and that's great. I like Jake Cave, but I think Hilliard can also kind of fill that role that Cave does, maybe not to the extreme, where he's about to rip off his shirt and go toe-to-toe with a umpire, but he can fill that role of a leader that's grown up in the Rockies organization. He knows what these guys are going through. He's struggled like some of these young guys too. Sam Hilliard could easily take a Jordan Beck under his wing and be like, hey, I struggled too, in my younger years, striking out and stuff, and here's what I've worked on, type of thing. So I think he's a valuable member they could keep around.
I agree. And, we have no idea what's going to happen between now and spring training, opening day. There could be so many changes. There's a chance that both Sam Hilliard and Jake Cave are on this team in April. There's a chance that neither of them are on this team in April. Mm-hmm. If I'm building this team, if I'm general manager Bill Schmidt, I understand that there is a choice that needs to be made between the two of them.
Yeah. Because you need a veteran backup outfielder who can play all three positions. You need that, especially if you're the Rockies.
What if they cut both and bring back Bradley Zimmer?
Bradley, we know we gave you a bad rap back in spring training. We want you back. Let's give you a chance. Sure thing, Skip. I don't know if that's what Bradley Zimmer sounds like. But
Mr. Papadopoulos is going to kill me.
But you need that veteran outfielder. Heck, if you're the Rockies, you really need 4 center fielders for this team to just cover the outfield wherever they go. And like we mentioned before, we might even get into it a little later. Load management with Brenton Doyle, who's played so much, but playing center field at Coors, that takes a toll on your body, and he's dealt with knee tendonitis most of the second half.
Yeah.
And all the weight he lost last year. You need more guys that can play center field and fit into that mix more regularly, which Sam Hilliard could do.
Yeah, Brenton Doyle has played 145 games this season, and for a guy who's really built on his speed and athleticism, that's a pretty hefty workload for a center fielder. And I'll need to look in and see, because I'm sure I can find the amount of games that we have seen a center fielder play, and I'm pretty sure that's up there. Mm-hmm. The Rockies have not had a center fielder play more than 100 games since Charlie Blackmon in 2018, where he played 151 games.
There you go.
And I'm scrolling through them all now, looking at Dexter Fowler, Willie Taveras. Pretty much nobody in Rockies history as a center fielder outside of Charlie Blackmon during his tenure as the center fielder, Preston Wilson in 2003, and Juan Pierre during his tenure have played the same amount of games or more games in a season than Brenton Doyle has this year, with 142 total games in center field. That's a lot. And he played 125 last year.
Yeah. And not all of them were in center field last year.
Yeah. That was a fascinating trip down memory lane, just like scrolling through. Because on Baseball Reference, they have a list of the year-by-year most common players at each position. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you every player who played at that position that year and for how many games. And Charlie Blackmon pretty regularly played 140 plus in center field from 2015 to 2019, or 2018 rather. But also remember, Charlie Blackmon and Brenton Doyle are two very different players.
Yep. But Charlie Blackmon's still stolen more bases in a season than him.
Charlie Blackmon's done a lot of things more than a lot of people.
But yeah, it's interesting because then you have other guys like a Greg Jones. Where does he fit into the conversation? No, because he's another one of those speedy utility infielder outfield. Your Garrett Hampson type, basically. Is he in the mix somewhere? Where does Zach Veen fit into all of this? Jordan Beck can play a little bit of center. Where does he fit into the outfield alignment? What do we do with Nolan Jones? Are the Rockies, is he a one-hit wonder? Or is he going to be something more? So many questions. But it feels pretty safe. Yeah, at least one of these guys will be on the team come 2025.
And, I'll be, as long as the role is understood by both the coaching staff and the player, I think it would be fine to have either of them. I just prefer Hilliard because I like more of what he brings to the table on the field versus in the clubhouse, versus that is reversed when it comes to Jake Cave.
Mm-hmm. We shall see. We shall see. But yeah, that's the Hilliard versus Cave debate. It's a pretty interesting one. We'll see what happens there in the offseason with them. But we'll go ahead and take one final break, and then when we come back, we'll wrap up some interesting stuff here for this final week. So don't go anywhere. The end of Rocky Mountain Rooftop is coming up next. We're back here on Affected by Altitude for Rocky Mountain Rooftop under the Fans First Sports Network. Skyler and Evan here. Final week. Evan, is this the last week we see one Charles Blackmon play in a Rockies uniform?
Honestly, I feel like the answer to that question is yes. We've seen his playing time has diminished here in September. He's not played nearly as much as I feel like he has throughout the rest of the season. I think he understands as well as anybody else that his performance has declined. And, it's tough because you watch him crank a home run against the Dodgers. You get all excited and you go, yeah, that's my Chuck Nasty right there. But then you watch him strike out in an at-bat or on a pitch that he never would have struck out against before. And you do go, he looks old. And well, I mean, he is, though. He's 38, almost 39 years old. And he's played for a long, long time. Is one of the greatest Rockies to ever put on the uniform. And, one of our colleagues, Renee Deckert, was talking about this, is that she thinks the organization knows and Chuck knows that this is probably his last week, but that knowing who Chuck is as a player and as a person really he is not wanting to make a big deal out of it. But I would not be surprised if at some point this week, even if it's the very last game of the season, we hear Charlie Blackmon is announcing that he is retiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be nice if Charlie because Todd Helton, same way, but Todd Helton still announced it of like, yeah, I'm going to be done at the end of the season. Because he's been here for a baker's dozen years. He's been in the organization for a long time. Fans love him. You go to a game at Coors Field, jerseys everywhere. People still sing his walk up song. Faithfully will sing out tonight. I was there for Roberto Clemente Day against the Cubs, and Chuck didn't start, but he did get a pinch hit late in the game and had the most unfortunate and funniest strikeout, which unfortunately is probably the last at bat I'll ever see of Charlie Blackmon, where he struck out and he flung the bat into the Rockies dugout on the swing as the bat flew out of his hands. But his walk-up song comes up in Spanish. They do the Spanish version of Your Love, and everybody still sings it perfectly. And I turned to my brother Dustin, Spanish teacher. I'm like, what would it be in Spanish? And so then he yells it out in Spanish during the when the walk-up song comes on. So it'd just be nice for the sake of the fans, as much as Chuck would hate to have the attention on him. You do it for the fans, so the fans can come and say goodbye of you as a player uniform instead of waiting after
Yeah.
and then we
having it be an off-season announcement would be, I don't want to use the word cruel to fans,
just unfortunate,
but it would not be a kind thing to do to the fans who have supported you for 14 years. And if I were a betting man, and the odds on whatever betting app you use or whatever, I was gonna name drop something, but then I couldn't think of a good one to say, is that my guess is at some point during this Cardinals series is when they announce it, so that they pack the stands for the final series of the season, which is a weekend series that ends on Sunday the 29th
against the Dodgers.
To give Chuck his send-off.
Yeah. That's why it was like, I was hoping like an announcement from this weekend. So then, you have the off day on Monday, and then you have Cardinals and Dodgers come to town. You're already going to get filled with opposing fans. How nice would it have been to just make that announcement? People are like, I got to go see Chuck one last time. And then you can get way more Rockies fans there. I'm thinking business-wise. But again, it's always up to Chuck what his announcements and stuff is. But yeah, it's just be nice to get. It's the not knowing of whether it is going to retire or not, because I think a lot of us hate the thought of him suiting up for another team, like Joey Votto going to the Blue Jays. Luckily, Joey Votto never played with the Blue Jays in the big leagues and decided to retire. But even then, how nice would it have been for Reds fans, to have Joey Votto announce, I'm going to retire at the end of last season.
Yeah.
So they can have that big farewell. They already had it because they knew, he's not going to come back because they're going to deny his contract. But I just don't want to have to wait for a number retirement or something else.
In the modern game of baseball, in this day and age, it is a very rare and very special thing to have a player as good as your Charlie Blackmons and your Joey Vottos dedicate the entirety of their very long careers to one team and to one fan base. And I think that, I admit there are much fewer Rockies fans than I would like, especially at the games. But the fan base, it would be a nice thing to do. Give them a little closure, give them what they know will be their last time seeing Charlie Blackmon suit up, because I don't think he's going to be back next year. And if he is, it cannot possibly be for how much they are paying him this year, because I love Chuck, but $13 to $15 million this year is a lot.
Surprise, we've re-signed Chuck for $20 million.
My thought for the contract now is the same as it was at the beginning of the season. And when they first announced that thing, is this last big paycheck was the thank you to Chuck from the organization of, you have stuck with us now for 13 seasons. We've been largely terrible while you've been here. So, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for everything you've done. Here's $13 million.
I'm forgetting here's some severance for your suffering here. But yeah, if they did have the retirement party, what are you giving Chuck? We're not giving him a horse like Todd Hilton, but what are you giving him? Big singing bass fish?
I was going to say an assortment of very fancy fishing flies and fishing rods.
There you go. And of
Or,
course, a weekend vacation to the Broadmoor Resort.
Yeah, or whatever it is. Is it the Broadmoor? I forget what it is. It's some resort that Dick Bonford owns.
Yeah, that's the Broadmoor, I think. That's what they give everybody.
It feels so cheap when they do that.
Here's this big, like, what do they do? Is it just the same cardboard, like, picture that they bring out every game? I assume so.
Be.
Or do they give that poster? Like, this is the actual certificate. Here you go. It's like a giant novelty check.
But I think the organization would be stupid not to. I do think we're going to see 19 get retired.
They better.
It would be a damn foolish thing to not retire that number.
And you've got Todd Helton saying, yeah, that number needs to be retired up there.
Yes. Both Todd Helton and Larry Walker have said Charlie Blackmon's number is next.
Yeah.
You going to make them liars?
Yeah. Yeah. There's no liars at Mick Donfort's. We're an honest organization. Yeah. Or they just go cheap and like, here's a singing bass from 1990. Or they give them an exact replica of that old 1990-something Jeep Grand Cherokee that Chuck was driving. I wonder if he's still driving it.
I do know, as far as I'm aware, he does still own it. It was a 1994 Jeep Grand Cherokee that he drove when he was in high school and college. Yeah. And still my favorite story of that is when he ran out of gas on the side of the road in Georgia and DJ had to come bail him out.
No, wasn't he on his way to, it was in Colorado when that happened.
I thought it was in Georgia.
No, I think it was in Colorado. And DJ was driving on his way into Denver and then saw Chuck and pulled over.
I am
pretty sure that was the story. It just happened. DJ just happened on him on the side of the road.
So it was in Georgia. But yeah.
But DJ just happened to drive by and see him.
It really does seem that way.
Because he just pulled over and took a picture of him.
Man,
good time.
We could spend, and we probably will during the off season with all the needs to find content, is just reflecting on some of the fun relationships and friendships between guys on this team throughout the years. Because I know that DJ and Chuck are still like very good friends.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably there's rumors that DJ LeMahieu might be retiring as well.
Who knows? Yeah. So it could be if you were to pick a Rockies game to go to, if you haven't gone to one all year, maybe look at going to one during this final week at Coors Field. If nothing else, to just go say goodbye to Charlie Blackmon, just in case we don't hear anything. Even though it is going to be the Cardinals and Dodgers, two of the worst fan bases to be around. But it is what it is. Go try to outnumber them.
Oh, yeah. Huge shout out to the always very classy Dodgers fans as they booed Hunter Goodman while he was walking off the field due to an injury.
Yeah, how dare he get hurt?
Stay classy, Dodgers fans.
Taken away from their precious Ohtani time. But, yeah, fun stuff. We'll miss you, Chuck, if this is the end. Well, maybe we'll know by the end of this hopefully by the end of the next episode, we'll have our answers. Who knows?
I still think we're going to hear something this coming week.
Yeah. We'll see. But
and if they do announce something, we'll probably put together a special episode or something.
Yeah, it's almost like I have some sort of podcast that covers former Rockies.
I think it's called Some Guys
All the Rockies that played.
I call it Billy and the Clonosaurus. Oh, you have got to be kidding me.
There's a best-selling novel in one of the greatest movies of all time.
Number one on the New York Times bestsellers list for 2 years.
What were you thinking? No.
First you come up with an idea that's already been done, and then you give it a name that no one would possibly like.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. It'll be bittersweet watching these final 6 games. We don't expect much from the Rockies. Hopefully they can get a couple more wins. It's just nice to win. But yeah, it'll be tough with the other fan bases being in there. But yeah, it'll be sad to see if it is Chuck's last ride in a Rockies uniform. Wish that it could have gone better. He deserved better. He deserved better as a player from the organization. But at least he got to go to the playoffs in 2017, 2018.
I feel like that's something that we say way too much when a great Rocky leaves the team or when he retires, is he deserved better.
Yeah. Carlos Gonzalez,
deserved
Troy
better.
Tulowitzki,
Deserved
Arenado,
better. Deserved better.
Todd Helton,
Deserved better.
Larry Walker,
Deserved better.
a lot of other guys. John Gray.
The only one who I would say, who got treated really well is Vinny Castilla.
Mm-hmm.
Vinny Castilla, his organization treated him perfectly well.
Yeah. And even then, most of the players in their history, they deserve better from the organization in the terms of getting everybody to the playoffs. But
yeah, in terms of being surrounded by high quality talent and getting the opportunity to play meaningful baseball after the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Well, we're going to hold on to this other topic. We were going to talk about KB in an article from Thomas Harding, but that can wait until next week when we need more stuff to talk about. But yeah, go look it up. Thomas Harding wrote about it on MLB.com, Rockies.com. But we'll dive into it next week about Chris Bryant because we've always got all that Chris Bryant content, baby.
Yeah, I mean, we were probably going to have to talk about it next week anyway, but basically diving into what the Rockies are doing it's basically all but confirmed at this point that KB is going to be back on the team next year. We all figured that was going to be the case. And so now we've got to talk about what his role is going to be.
Unless they're just going to send Jaspy and the other guy to Las Vegas to hand him his pink slips. I hope you're hungry for nothing. Again,
bring him a Danger Witch.
It's spicy. Oh, goodness. Again, I will reiterate, I want Nathan Fielder to bring back Nathan for you and do an episode where he tries to help the Rockies. It would just be glorious to see him bringing up stuff to Dick Monfort and Dick just being confused out of his mind. Oh, it would be hilarious. But yeah, that'll do it here for this week's edition of Affected by Altitude. As always, we appreciate you tuning in and following along this season. We'll get all that good stuff next week, but appreciate you tuning in. Evan, where can the folks find you, as has been the case all year?
Well, I think they can probably still find me on Twitter at Evan_Lang27. I am on Blue Sky if that ever takes off. Like they say, it's got a bunch more users now, but I still feel like I'm shouting in the wind over there. You can also find me on www.purplerow.com, writing the Monday Rock Pile and the Tuesday Weekly Pebble Report. With the minor league season over, those Pebble reports are going to change to monthly starting in October, and throughout the rest of the offseason, we'll resume being weekly probably when spring training starts. We will have weekly Arizona Fall League recaps, though, so keep an eye out for those. Those will essentially fill the spot of the weekly Pebble Report until the Arizona Fall League is done. You can also follow Rocky Mountain Rooftop on your favorite podcasting platforms of choice, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeart, and find us on your social media platforms at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop.
Yeah, you can find all the player interviews we've had. Evan just recently did one with Nolan Clifford. It was a 2024 draft pick.
Delight he was.
Yeah, it's a real quick conversation. but he was with AAA at the time, talking about his pro debut. And then they sent him back to the ACL, but it was nice. Evan was able to catch him there after his first game as a professional in Albuquerque. So that was pretty cool. And we've had other conversations. Jared Thomas, Kyle Karros, MVP Kyle Karros.
Yeah, your Northwest League MVP, Kyle Karros.
I think that's we have to refer to him as. Aiden Longwell, some other guys.
Ryan Rollison.
Yeah, Ryan Rollison, Drew Romo as well. Also, huge shout out to our pal, Stephen Rice, the broadcaster for the Fresno Grizzlies. He announced he will not be returning as the broadcaster for the Grizzlies, but we wish him all the best. Appreciate him and him being a fan of the show, helping set up some of those interviews and hopping on the show himself to talk Fresno Grizzlies. No, hard to find a dude with less positivity than him.
Yeah. He's going to be greatly missed, and has been a big supporter of this show. And we're going to miss the guy.
Yeah, and he's still over there on Twitter, so you can go send him some love. Stephen Rice, I think, is at Rice Cakes, something like that on Twitter. But yeah, he's a good dude. Good dude, knows his stuff.
At Rice Cakes 20.
There you go. Go. Tell Steven we said hi. Tell Steven we sent you. But yeah, appreciate him and his contributions to just covering Rockies minor league baseball. It's a tough gig. And shout out to all our minor league affiliates this season. Good years for all of them across the board. Albuquerque, play on the field rough, but everybody behind the scenes that we interact with, we appreciate them and all that good stuff. But you can find me over on Twitter at sideline_crowd, then writing the Wednesday Rock Piles at purpleroad.com, and writing some stuff at fansfirstsports.com. Yeah, good stuff. And be on the lookout. We'll have a lot more at Purple Row, ranking the Rockies, all kinds of good stuff. So yeah, just follow along and come along for the ride.
Let's see what minor leaguer we can harass during their vacations.
Yes. Yeah, we appreciate it. And that'll do it here for this edition of Affected by Altitude. I'm Skyler. That's Evan. Hit him with it.
Farewell.
Farewell. Farewell. Farewell.
Ma.
Farewell.
Farewell.
This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.